Hey, this is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. Well, just a reminder, I am not a doctor, I'm not your doctor, and I'm not a scientist. I am an end user. I am somebody that is just trying to get healthy and figure things out. But I read a lot and study these issues because I'm trying to maximize my health, and I share that information with other people. Now, something that's bugged me of late, and whenever I go to the doctor, there's only two numbers, and two numbers only, that the doctors care about. And I've been trying to figure out why. One of them is your blood pressure, and the other one is your LDL cholesterol. Like, all your health is dependent upon those two numbers, and that's it. And frankly, that's not true. Because, when you look at the number one cause of heart disease, the thing that's most likely to give you a heart attack, is really your overall metabolic health. And those should be 5 numbers that you should care about. You should care about how big your waist is. That requires a tape measure. Your blood pressure, your HDL cholesterol, which is the so-called good cholesterol, that needs to be high. Your triglyceride levels, that's another bit on your cholesterol panel, those need to be low. And then what's your blood sugar, your fasting blood glucose level. And if 3 of those 5 are out of whack, you've got metabolic syndrome, and that puts you at extremely high risk for having a heart attack. Now, why don't they talk about that? Well, because frankly, 4 out of the 5 can't be controlled with a simple pill. So that requires lifestyle management and control. And frankly, I'm not even sure that controlling, having low or regular blood pressure when it's controlled by medication is actually part of the overall metabolic syndrome, or trying, does that mean that you're metabolically healthy if you have to take a medication to control your blood pressure? That's debatable. So, basically, you have to do lifestyle in order to become metabolically healthy. There's no pill for that, and it doesn't require a lot of doctors' follow-ups. So let's talk about, what they are telling you to worry about and why. And LDL cholesterol was never really much of a concern. It was usually the overall cholesterol level was what people were really worried about, because frankly, until the 1950s, heart attacks were relatively rare. At the beginning of the 20th century, when somebody had a heart attack, it was written up in a major medical journal. It was that big of an event. And 3 things happened also at the beginning of the 20th century. There was the introduction of vegetable seed oils. Things like Crisco suddenly went into the diet. The amount of sugar that we were eating went through the roof. And Philip Morris figured out a way of making cigarettes real cheap and easy, and they started marketing them to women. And so no longer, the only way to smoke used to be a pipe or a cigar, until those guys came out there, and suddenly half the adult population is smoking. Doctors are out there pimping cigarettes, saying this brand is healthier than that brand. And, we are setting ourselves up for heart attacks. When you look at it from our late 21st century approach, we're going to say, a lot of sugar, a lot of oil, and, the cigarette smoking, there's going to be heart attacks. And sure enough, Eisenhower has a heart attack in the 1950s. He's a sitting U.S. president. People are concerned about it. And along comes Ancel Keys. And Ansel's got the answer. It has nothing to do with the smoking. It has nothing to do with the vegetable seed oils. It has nothing to do with the sugar. It's all saturated fat. Even though we were eating lots of saturated fat at the beginning of the 20th century, before there were heart attacks, suddenly they are now a danger. And he's got this 7-country study that shows that saturated fat and cholesterol is what's causing heart attacks. This becomes dogma. This is what everybody is buying into. And as a result, we're trying like crazy to reduce the amount of cholesterol in our diet. And you can see this chart here, which shows that egg sales, the per capita consumption of eggs dropped after that data came out. People started worrying about it. And the red meat consumption dropped, etc. And then in the 1960s, the Surgeon General comes out and says, oh, voila, guess what? Yeah, we've been ignoring the data for a very long time, but smoking causes cancer. And as a result, a large number of people quit smoking. We go from half the population smoking to down to less than 10%. Pretty rapid change. Now, with a drop in the amount of saturated fat that people are eating and a major reduction of smoking, you would think this would result in a end of heart disease. But it gets even better because in the 1990s, somebody developed statin drugs. Drugs that can chemically lower your so-called bad cholesterol, the LDL, that is going to suddenly change all of heart disease. And they thought, there was actually talk that people were going to put that in the water, and this was going to eliminate all heart disease in this country because that was the number one killer. That was the number one reason why people were getting heart disease, was because of cholesterol. And where are we now? Are we in a golden age where there's no more heart attacks? No, I mean, frankly, back in the 90s, they were discouraging doctors from going into cardiology because they were just like, hey, with these statin drugs, nobody's going to need you anymore. Well, you try to get in and see a cardiologist. They're swamped. Why? Because frankly, it didn't reduce heart disease. Look, there are fewer people today that die of heart attacks than have ever died in, the last 50 years. But that's because we've gotten really good at treating it. There's more tests that we can pick it up early. There's stents. There's a whole host of different technologies, and we've gotten better. It used to be, nobody knew CPR. Now everybody knows CPR. There's defibrillators everywhere. There's a lot of early treatment for it, etc. If you have a heart attack in the United States, there's a real good chance you're going to survive. You may not even know that you even had one in some cases, like mine. But, just because you're surviving the heart attack doesn't mean that the heart disease isn't there. Despite the reduction in blood pressure, and again, why are the doctors concerned about that? Because they can reduce it chemically. They can reduce your blood pressure chemically fairly easily. So, as a result, they've been reducing that number. It used to be, when my grandfather was around, having a blood pressure over 160 wasn't that big a deal. But now, because of all these chemicals they can give you to reduce your blood pressure, they've got it pushed it down to 120. Cholesterol, having one over 200, an LDL over 200 wasn't that big a deal, and during the 1980s. But as soon as they started to be able to chemically reduce it, now it's down under 100. Which means if you've got blood pressure over 120 or an LDL over 100, you now become a patient for life of Big Pharma and your doctor, and you've got to go see them for your maintenance medications. Now, does this mean you're off scot-free? Does anybody believe that their health is suddenly significantly better, that they can live life large because they reduced their LDL cholesterol or kept their blood pressure low? And frankly, I don't buy that at all. There are side effects that come with all these medications. There are people that I know that are taking all these serious blood pressure medications, and they can't have sex anymore. They lose energy. They get lightheaded very easily because there's side effects that come with the blood pressure medication. Now, I'm not saying go off of them. I'm just saying, it's not a free lunch. Just taking the medication isn't going to improve the quality of your life, and you're ignoring the fact that it's much more it's possible to change your blood pressure by changing your diet and lifestyle. Intense exercise along with a low-carb diet have been shown to significantly reduce your blood pressure, more so than the American Heart Association DASH diet does. So there's ways of naturally reducing your blood pressure that they're not telling you about. They're just automatically giving you pills. They're ignoring the side effects that come with statin medications. My cholesterol, believe it or not, when I smoked, drank, and was 300 pounds, my LDL cholesterol was never over 98. So I was never on a statin drug. I never had a cholesterol problem. It wasn't until I got healthy, when I lost over 100 pounds, when I quit smoking and drinking, and when I started eating a single ingredient carnivore type diet, that my cholesterol level went up, and they started freaking out, and they started demanding that I take a statin. So, and I had read enough about the anti-inflammatory effects of statin drugs, I thought I'd give it a shot. So they finally convinced me to try it. I tried it, and after a few days, I started getting horrible leg cramps, which is one of the side effects that come from taking statin medications, so I just discontinued using it. It wasn't worth it. There's problems related to statin drugs. There's brain fog, there's risk of increased type 2 diabetes. There's a whole host of problems that come along with taking statin drugs, and I frankly didn't want to do it. I'm not your doctor. I'm not saying don't take them. I'm just saying I didn't because I saw risk that went along with those drugs. But when I see the doctor, that's the thing that they're going to be most concerned about. It's going to be my blood pressure, which always goes up when I'm at the doctor's office, because frankly, they measure blood pressure wrong. They want you to come in fresh off the street, talk to the receptionist, go through an insurance conflict, and then they strap on the blood pressure monitor, and it's going to be high for me because I'm kind of frustrated right even before I get a chance to talk to the doc. And then my blood cholesterol level, LDL cholesterol, is going to be high, and frankly, I think that's the way nature wants it. I mean, I don't see much of a downside risk to it because I'm metabolically healthy. It's your call. It's your choice. You got to be able to figure these things out for yourself. Take a look at the notes. I mean, you might find it fascinating that, again, 2020, American Academy of Cardiology changed their recommendation from saying, hey, you need to stay away from saturated fat in your diet, to suddenly saying, you know what, we were wrong for 60 years, and frankly, that's not a nutrient of concern. There's no data out there that shows that eating a high saturated fat diet causes any more heart problems. So therefore, we're dropping that recommendation. It only took them 60 years. But think about that when you're being forced into taking blood pressure medication, taking medication to reduce LDL, while they're ignoring the most important thing, which is your overall metabolic health. Food for thought. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. Try to put out a couple messages each week. If you like this message, please hit like and subscribe. Join this channel of other like-minded folks who are trying to make a difference in their health. I will talk to you again soon.